Hi, it's Laura at Home18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is my end of month recap updates video for March 2024, filming on April 1st, 2024. So I am hoping that this actually goes okay with Mercury retrograde already causing some tech problems, but I'm going to do my best. I have some general kind of musings, life updates, thoughts to share, as well as the usual decks I've been using this month, decks that have come into my collection in the month of March, books that I've read, in a couple of cases, books that I haven't read, and looking at my deck to explore slash wish list at the end. So, in terms of general life updates, I do have some good, exciting things to share, but I'm going to hold back and share a happy news update in closer to the middle of the month. There is something that I'm really crossing my fingers for that I'm still waiting, and I'm not going to find out for at least a couple of days, and I'm not going to jinx it by talking about it ahead of time. So I will have a good little update, a little random life update in, in and around the April 10th or so, once all of the anticipated good news is solidified. So just that's cryptic, but I will have things to share anyway. Uh, Other than that kind of cryptic future good news update, March was my birthday month, so I had a good month. I love my birthday month. So I celebrated my birthday kind of throughout kind of throughout the month. I went to Toronto for a concert right close to my actual birthday, which was March 5th. We went to see Mad Caddies at Lee's Palace, which was really great. I saw them with a friend who I've known since we were like 15 and 16. We have seen, this band before, probably 15 years ago at this point, maybe more. So it was really, really fun to get to go together and just have a great night out. And I loved it. And I really want to go to more shows in Toronto. It's not that far for me. There is some decent transit available, so I really want to do this more. We had an absolute blast doing that. I also had a birthday dinner out just with my partner. Locally, we went out for Mexican. I had fabulous cauliflower tacos. They were really, really good. That was my birthday dinner. And, just had a lunch out with my best friend on my actual birthday. I took the day off from work. I didn't overly plan the day off. I just relaxed, enjoyed some time outside, enjoyed some tarot time, had a birthday reading for myself. Really chill birthday overall, I would say. I turned 37, and so far so good in 37. So, happy birthday to me. Decks I received this month. I feel like this will be the most decks received this month because birthday month. I treated myself a little bit. So, the first couple of decks that I received this month that I'll mention, I actually didn't buy this month. They're things that I had, in one case, pre-ordered and in one case, Kickstarter backed in 2023, actually. So these were not birthday treats. They just happened to arrive during the birthday month. So they felt like birthday treats. The first one that I had pre-ordered last year is Mini Nellie's deck by Kelly Fitzgerald of The Truth and Story. This is a playing card Oracle Lenormand Tarot hybrid. And I already have this deck, but it's a mini. This one's the mini. So I pre-ordered it as soon as there would be a mini available. I knew that I would get this. Um, I am not a proficient Lenormand reader, but I feel like if I ever go in that direction and want to do things like a grand tableau or, a really large reading, that this small size would be really good to have. So I was happy to pick that up just for size comparison to a normal tarot. This is really mini, like smaller than the tin, smaller than the deck in a tin for sure. So I'm really excited about those. And with it, for a little birthday treat, I got a little travel altar kit that Kelly is making these, doing these different kind of woodworking. So there's a couple of different ones. Obviously, Druid, the choice was obvious. And it comes with these elemental tokens, if you can see that. They're like cutouts of glyphs of the elements. It comes with a not magic string here. It comes with a little crystal clear quartz. It comes with a empty spray bottle that you could put any kind of room spray in. That's what I would use it for anyway, but you could put anything that you want in there. And it comes with geomancy sticks made by Kelly. So I learned to read geomancy with Kelly in her class. And so having these geomancy sticks that Kelly made feels really special. And I'm really excited about this and to bring this on my travels with me. So, not a deck, but a birthday treat. I had pre-ordered the mini deck sometime back in 2023 when it was announced that there would be a pre-order for that. And then the little box I ordered later, and Kelly kindly combined shipping for me. So I was very happy about that. I also got, and this is probably to nobody's surprise because I'm sure everybody would guess that I would back the game Marseille on Kickstarter by Charlie Claire Burgess. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this. I still have it in order because my friend and I had a Zoom call to kind of go over our thoughts when we both got this deck, which was really nice. And so I haven't shuffled yet, but I know it will shuffle wonderfully well because it's the cardstock of the Indie Fifth Spirit. And this is a kind of deck that makes me excited to work with Marseille and spend more time studying Marseille and more kind of cartomancy style techniques. I'm really, really excited about this. I love the colors. This is for sure, springtime deck for me. So I was really happy that this came during my birthday month. It felt like a little birthday gift, even though, of course, I knew it was coming quite a few months ago when I had backed it on the Kickstarter. So I just backed for, I think, the pretty basic. I don't remember what all the backing options were. I got the guidebook. I don't remember if they all came with this or if it was an add-on. And then I also got a sheet of stickers, which, true to form, I have not I have not stuck on anything. I feel like something's going to go on my computer. I don't know. My laptop doesn't have any stickers on it yet, which is unusual for me. So maybe that will be one of the first. So those are the decks that I got ahead of time but arrived during birthday month. My birthday treats. I'm really excited about my birthday treats, and I've been talking about them on my to explore / wish list for a while. And they're oracle decks created by a tarot tube creator, which might give it away. I got the 9 Coins Oracle by Tishan of 9 Coins here on Tarot Tube. And this is a 54 card deck comprised of photos taken with 35mm film, 120mm film, or digitally between 2020 and 2023. And I really like so much about this. I think it's a really unique assortment of key phrases that is like nothing I've seen before. And I also just find this deck really inspiring as a super, super amateur aspiring photographer. I tend to, so far, mostly do nature photography, animals and landscapes and things like this, and not so much kind of out in the community photos of people. And this inspires me to maybe try broadening my subject matter repertoire a little bit because these are just really beautiful. I really, really like this. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited. And while I was in Nine Coins shop, I also got the Oracle of Simple Space, and this I have filmed a walkthrough and thoughts. I haven't posted it yet, obviously, but I did film one, so I'm not going to go on about this too much. Suffice to say, I think it's a really cool mix of um, astrology concepts, astronomy, and just kind of space and the symbolism of space. It really appeals to me as a Trekkie sci-fi nerd who is also learning astrology. Like there's something really interesting about the combination of things in this deck. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy with my birthday treats. My birthday treats. So those are the decks that I've received this month. I did also buy the Citadel Oracle, but it's not here yet. So that one had been on my wish list for a while, as folks who watch these updates know. I feel like it's kind of an obvious pick for me as a fantasy reader. I'm looking forward to looking at that, and I had a little bookstore coupon, so so that worked out well. But it's not here yet, so I'll share my thoughts on that when it's here. Decks I've worked with the most this month. I thought about doing a springtime decks video. Maybe I still will. I've been enjoying the springtime decks videos that everyone else has been putting up, decks they want to work with this spring. I definitely have a handful of specific decks that I think I will be working the most this season, including the Gay Marseille for sure, for example. Feels very springtime. But the decks that I've been using the most are the Forest Lore Tarot. This is a really good deck. I used this for my spring equinox reading, which was really nice. I think that the pairings of the animals and plants with the cards are really well chosen. And this is, I think it's more so focused on like British wildlife, but there are um, a lot of species in here that, are either also present where I live in Ontario or are very similar or are familiar to me from other contexts like learning the Ogham. So while this is not specifically, um, tied to my ecological environment, it does feel very familiar and easy to work with in that case. We see, black-capped chickadees are all over my yard right now. So there's lots of familiar faces. There's some that don't live here, but I would say there's probably more creatures in this deck that do live where I live than don't. So I've really been enjoying that deck. And then a very local one to me that I have been working with the most this month, and is definitely a springtime deck for me, is the Great Lakes Oracle. So this one is made on the US side of the Great Lakes, so more of the kind of landmarks are on that side, but I am familiar with and have been to quite a few of them. I grew up on Lake Huron. I don't live right on the lake now, but I live close. And so this deck feels like home. I really like this one. And I like how they just have the name of whatever is depicted. That amazing moon. And not too limiting of keywords. This deck has a book that's like pretty substantial, I would say. This is the Everyday Treasures edition. I'm not sure if that means that there was a different edition before. When I purchased this, there were a couple of different options in terms of I bought mine, I think, without a box for the sake of kind of environmental considerations and using less packaging. But as far as I know, there was only one version of the deck itself. I feel like I need to make a little zine or little fold up keyword something, little white book DIY style for this deck, as well as for the Tarot of the Great Lakes. Tarot of the Great Lakes doesn't come with a book at all. This one, while it does come with a book, I find this book to be nicely written but overly affirmative for me. And not just overly affirmative for me in terms of the kinds of oracle decks that I like, but also overly affirmative for me, like given some of the content. So, you know, I think working with a deck that's Great Lakes related, for example, like issues like pollution are really important to think about in the context of the Great Lakes, right? And in a kind of affirmation deck, you don't get that so much, and each card has an affirmation in the book. So I think I'll make my own little guidebook. I have grand ambitions of making quite a few guidebooks for like other people's decks that I own, just for myself, just a little fold out for myself. But I really like that deck, so I've been enjoying working with that one. That's the decks I've been using this month. Tarot for the Great Lakes feels more summery than spring to me. So I don't necessarily use my two Great Lakes decks together all the time. Like they're both fabulous decks, but they don't necessarily go together for me. Oh, I was going to just share. I don't know what I'm going to call this in the timestamps, but um, some musings on my tarot practice as of late. I feel like part of spring for me and spring equinox for me in terms of the kinds of things I'm thinking about and looking at and exploring at that time, there's a certain amount of almost like a New Year's energy to spring equinox for me. Like the hibernation time of winter is coming to an end and things are, emerging anew. And it's not the time that I do resolutions per se. I've shared kind of New Year's resolutions on my channel already, but it does have this kind of refreshing and renewing energy about it. And so, some of the things that comes into for me are like pretty mundane things that I think probably a lot of people do around spring. I cleaned out my closet and my dresser and donated a whole bunch of clothing. We also cleaned out our kitchen cupboards and donated some cookware and things that we didn't need or weren't using, things that we ended up kind of having two of and had never really dealt with since my partner moved in and we started living together, like during a quarantine time, and like just cleaning things out and refreshing things and bringing the spring energy in. And this tends to be a time of year, and it's probably because of this kind of clean out energy that I'm feeling, that I can feel like a lot of flux in my personal tarot practice. And I've been feeling that a lot this month, particularly with respect to my lunar cycle practice. In terms of reading for myself, I read for myself in terms of like a card or cards of the day every morning. It's like very small reading, a little bit of journaling there. I read for myself when I have a question, like a specific issue that I want to explore, a particular decision I need to make, something I'm struggling with. I go to the cards when I have like a specific concern. And then I also read for myself regularly in terms of the lunar cycle. And what that has looked like for me over the course of the years that I've been taroting now has sometimes been a larger reading for myself on new moons and full moons. Sometimes that has looked like much smaller readings, like 3 card readings at every distinct moon phase. So at, you know, new moon, crescent, first quarter, and so on. So many more readings, but smaller readings. And that's what I've been doing most recently is many more readings, but smaller. And I'm starting to feel myself maybe shift back in the other direction again. And I feel like I'm probably not the only one in the tarot community who might call themselves a bit of an overthinker with respect to things like this. I experiment a lot in terms of the frequency with which I want to read for myself, what kinds of readings I'm doing for myself, you know, how many readings, how large of readings, what kinds of spreads, playing around with designing spreads with reference to astrology, designing spreads with reference to the moon phase. Like all of these things are things that I've talked about and things that I've been doing. And I don't play around with these things as if I'm like looking for the perfect rhythm of moon readings and once I find it, it will never change. Like not at all. I think that, you know, maybe sometimes people fall into that trap a little bit. I've caught myself there a little bit, but I just like experimenting and playing around with cards. So for the first time, a in quite a while, a full moon actually went by without me doing a reading. And afterwards, I'm like, I feel a bit weird about this. And that feeling of weirdness very quickly passed. It's fine. I'm not like giving myself a hard time because I missed a moon. It's it's the moon is not normative in that way, right? I don't feel bad about it. But with this kind of rejuvenating energy of spring, I'm thinking of like refreshing my practice a little bit and what that might look like. Maybe this is a separate video. Maybe I'll make some kind of video about springtime tarot practice refresher or something or other instead of doing a springtime decks video. I don't know. Or maybe I'll just mull these things over and share them later on in another update. We'll see. But anyway, tell me about your practice of reading for yourself and what your rhythm of reading for yourself is like in the comments if you feel like sharing and feel comfortable sharing. I would love to know. I think that I really just I want to read for myself more, but I also I also don't always feel the need to. So, it's just kind of, exploring those things. I'm full of enthusiasm. I don't feel like I'm in a rut. I don't feel like I'm in a slump or anything like that. It's just a kind of, is this really the rhythm of reading for myself that I feel like right now, or do I want to mix things up? And I feel very inclined towards mixing things up for spring. And so I don't know what that looks like yet. That's an ill thought out ramble, but that's just a thing I've been thinking about, and I like to process things verbally, so there you go. Now, I have books that I've read this month, of course, that I want to share and tell you about. 9 of them. But before I do, I thought I would share a couple of book related things. One is I had a fun experience the other day. My springtime cleaning, clear out energy made its way into my Goodreads list. So the other day I noticed that on Goodreads, which I've had the same Goodreads account since 2015, so I've been on there a while, I have had, when I looked at it a couple days ago, I had 611 books shelved as read and 730 books shelved as want to read. And the 611 read, like I know I've read more than that in the last 9 years, but I wasn't always actively using the website at all. So I'm not concerned about that. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I only want to read 730 books. That seems low. I think I want to read way more books in the world than that. And somehow that turned into going through my entire want to read shelf and shrinking it from 730 to 482. So I spring cleaned my TBR, which was fun. Some of that was kind of like actually just cleaning things up, like the way that Goodreads works, different formats of a book will have different identification numbers. So in some cases I had the same book like read and reviewed and also listed as want to read. If I had like reviewed the ebook but wanted to read, I had put down the paperback for some reason. So some of it was just kind of clearing up duplications like that, but then a lot of it was like, I'm not really going to read this. Delete. And it felt quite good, I will say. Now I have a manageable 482, which I'm sure I've probably added to since yesterday when I did this. That was fun. Anyway, the other book thing I wanted to throw out there, and I will make a dedicated video about this in a while, maybe in a month or two. I will make a dedicated video about this. But I would like to see if other folks might be interested in reading a book together. And specifically, I would like to see if there's interest in reading together Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I have read this not recently, not at all recently, like not in the past decade. This was published in the early 90s for the first time. But this book starts, in terms of the timeline of the book itself, Saturday, July 20th, 2024 is when the book starts. So I had made a plan in my resolutions to read these books, and there's a sequel. Parable of the Talents is the sequel. I had made a plan to read these books, reread these books in 2024. The second book starts in 2032, but I'm not inclined to wait until 2032 to read the sequel. And I feel like there might be other people in the Tarot Tube community or Tarot Tube adjacent who might be interested in reading this together and having some discussion about it. It is a tough read. Definitely, mind the content warnings around this book, but I feel like it's a really important one. It's an important book for all kinds of reasons. I'll read the synopsis on the back here. When global climate change and economic crises lead to social chaos in the early 2020s, California becomes full of dangers, from pervasive water shortage to masses of vagabonds who will do anything to live to see another day. 15-year-old Lauren Olamina lives inside a gated community with her preacher father, family, and neighbors, sheltered from the surrounding anarchy. In a society where any vulnerability is a risk, she suffers from hyperempathy, a debilitating sensitivity to others' emotions. Precocious and clear-eyed, Lauren must make her voice heard in order to protect her loved ones from the imminent disasters her small community stubbornly ignores. But what begins as a fight for survival soon leads to something much more: the birth of a new faith and a startling vision of human destiny. I think that Octavia Butler was a genius, an absolute genius. And I think that reading her vision of 2024, her fictional vision of 2024 in 2024 would be a really interesting experience that I'm looking forward to having. And I would like to share it with folks. If there's others who are interested in reading these, I would be interested in having a conversation about what that could look like. So I'm putting that out there. It's not a well-formed idea yet, but sometime between now and July, I will throw out some suggestions. Okay. Books I've read this month, 9 of them. I'll start off with some statistics in my reading for March. I read 9 books. I read a total of 2,755 pages. And in my page count, I only count the pages of the books that I finish. So if I read 100 pages of a book and then I decide not to finish it, I don't count those 100 pages. I know others count their pages differently. I'm not saying this in a prescriptive way, just the 2755 in terms of the number of pages I read, that is the total page count of the 9 books I finished. And that is always the case when I'm reviewing and reading. My average rating this month was 3.9. And this is like a little bit low for me, actually. I I want that to be over 4. Most of the books that I read, I gave 4 stars. One book I didn't finish. I'll get to that in a bit. And in not finishing it, I didn't rate it I didn't rate it at all. But I would like to see the 3.9 go higher. Of the 9 books I read, 5 of those were authors who were new to me, and 4 were authors that I'd read before. I read every single one of the 9 books as an ebook, which is part of the context for my April TBR being read my physical books that I've bought and haven't read yet, because I read no physical books in March. I read only ebooks. I read little bits of, actually, I shouldn't say that. I did read some hard copy books, but I didn't finish any. I have some on the go, but none are finished. So I'm going to look at hard copy books. Yeah. So 3.9, 3.9, 3.9 is not that great. Okay. And since they're all ebooks, I will put pictures up here of the books, several of which were in my March TBR video, but not all, as you'll see. The TBR is always a plan, and a plan can change immediately after it's made. So the TBR and the books I've read are probably never going to match up 100% perfectly. There it is. So I read House of Open Wounds by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This was a arc that I got from NetGalley, and this was a book I talked about in my TBR. This is a sequel to, I think the first book is called City of Last Chances. I read it some time ago when it was a new release. House of Open Wounds, also a new release this year, hence being advanced copy. Adrian Tchaikovsky I really like. He's a very prolific author who writes both fantasy and science fiction. This falls firmly into the fantasy category. It follows a number of characters in a field hospital, and it's a field hospital of a empire, basically, that is conducting warfare in order to occupy more and more territory. And this field hospital is staffed by, um, for the most part, people whose territories have been taken over and are being occupied by this occupying power. And so a lot of the book definitely has to do with these kinds of power dynamics involved in that. I read someone who made a review of this book online talking about this book and its predecessor said, like, I don't know how Adrian Tchaikovsky followed up the first book, which was like a Les Mis, with the second book that's like MASH, but there it is. And like I felt like that was very apt actually. There's there's a degree of humor in House of Open Wounds. It is fairly relentless though in terms of the violent content, I will say, in terms of the gory content, particularly at the beginning. Um, it has a very different scope than the City of Last Chances, which was very kind of sprawling and all these different factions. House of Open Wounds is very narrow, very narrowly focused, a handful of characters in a very cramped space most of the time, which gave it a very, very different feel. I really liked it. I really liked it. I knew I would like it. I haven't read anything by Adrian Tchaikovsky that I really didn't like, so I really liked that one. I read A Lake of Souls, the collected short fiction by Ann Leckie, also was on my TBR, also is a advanced copy. This one, I had already read some of the stories in it. So Ann Leckie is the author of the Imperial Raj trilogy, which starts with Ancillary Justice is the first book. They're Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Sword, and Ancillary Mercy is the trilogy. And that trilogy is extraordinary. That it is amazing science fiction. It does interesting things with gender and language and embodiment, like such a great science fiction trilogy. I've also read Ann Leckie's Raven Tower, which is a fantasy novel. And this collection, Lake of Souls, included some standalone short fiction, some short fiction that was set in the ancillary kind of universe, and then some that was set in the Raven Tower universe, which is a fantasy universe where there's all different gods and spirits that people can have relationships with and that interact with different, human communities in different kinds of ways, right? Um, People can make deals with them and things like this. I really liked this collection. I do wonder with this collection if some of the stories would make much, if any, sense if you haven't read the long fiction first. I do think between the two that I prefer Anne Leckie's long fiction over the short. There were some really great stories in here, though. My favorite was one about two kind of diplomats, I guess, negotiators, whose translation device malfunctions in a plane crash, and they're left to try to kind of hash things out between them with a massive communication barrier, also being chased, not sure by whom, who's trying to kind of sabotage the negotiations. I really liked that story. Um, and I liked some of the ones that were set in, both universes of the fantasy and science fiction universes from her long fiction. I gave this 4 stars. I would not suggest it as a place to start with Anne Leckie, though. So that is my kind of caveat. I think that some of the stories really work well in a way that hinges on the massive amount of world building that happens in the novels, right? Like I think just as a kind of little slice on their own, not all of them 100% work if you're a reader who's not familiar with the broader context. So I would say to read Ancillary Justice because it's amazing. And then maybe read Lake of Souls if you like the long fiction. I read The Imposition of Unnecessary Obstacles by Malka Older. This was also on my TBR. This is a kind of cozy-ish mystery set on Jupiter, where humans have made this complicated kind of settlements around Jupiter that are kind of platforms. Obviously, they're not on the surface of Jupiter. That wouldn't make sense. And this is a sequel. So it follows two characters, one of whom is an investigator and one of whom is kind of a professor. And they have feelings for each other and a bit of a history, romantic history of sorts, and they investigate. In this case, it's people starting to go missing from the university campus. I think that if you like a cozy mystery, you might like this one. I would say definitely to read the first book first. They're novellas, so they're fairly short. I did not like this one as much as the first one. And the reason I did not like this one as much as the first one is because this one definitely went further into making the romance more central. And I think I've come to realize that I'm just not much of a romance person. Like there's a lot of um, conversation about and books coming out that kind of fall into this kind of romantasy, or in this case, it would be kind of a romance science fiction, romance mystery, kind of combining different genres with romance, right? And I find that I'm less interested in the romance parts a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time. So not my favorite. Still good, just not my absolute favorite. Then the last fiction that I read, which I just finished, which was not on my TBR, but I had some time to read another book. And so I read Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. This is a new release. I think it just came out. I got an advance copy. Thank you, publishers. And this is a weird one. This is a weird one. So Someone You Can Build a Nest In. The main point of view character is a amorphous blob that can take on different shapes as she wants to, including take on a human shape in a way that in the story is convincing enough for other humans for her to be believed as human. And she can take different things into her blobby body, like chair legs and knives and all different kinds of bear traps and all different kinds of things, and kind of construct a skeleton for herself with those things, and then can take on a kind of humanoid shape. And she eats people and is looking to lay her eggs in someone she could build a nest in, right? And so this is another one. This is a romantasy of sorts. Again, the romance part to me was like the least somehow the least believable part of this. Somehow the least believable part of this was like this insta romance that she has with this woman that she meets. And there's a there's a plot that has to do with the woman that she falls for's family thinks that a monster has cursed their family, so they're all monster hunters looking to hunt the protagonist. And this, of course, poses relationship challenges. Now, there were things I really liked about this. Somehow the significant amounts of gore and body horror combined with the kind of comedic, lighthearted tone somehow worked. And I don't know how, but somehow worked in a really interesting way. I do think that protagonists like this that are very non-human are very hard to do. And when done well, are extremely compelling, i.e. Murderbot. I think with this one, my challenge was that the point of view character is so human. And it's not clear to me why, given everything else about her, right? But her internal monologue is very, very human. And so I found that to be a bit difficult. I also thought the last 25% of the book could have just been like lopped off. Or the last 20%. The last 20%. There's like a satisfying ending and then there was more. And that didn't work. I think that the author is a good writer. I've never read anything by him before. I would happily read something from him again. This did not quite work for me. So that was the fiction. In terms of nonfiction, I read an essay by P. Jelly Clark, who I love, as you all know, Fantasy's Othering Fetish. This is a number of years old now, and it is essentially an essay that is doing a Edward Said influenced, specifically Orientalism as a concept, influenced analysis of a number of contemporary or contemporary-ish fantasy works and looking at the ways in which uh, so much of fantasy literature has functioned in othering, racializing ways. And I think that the essay was good. I found myself nodding, you know. I think that if you are familiar with Said and Said's concepts around Orientalism, I don't know that this essay will be like mind-boggling to read, but I thought that it was a strong analysis. I think that probably since this has been written, there would be even more subject matter to subject to this analysis. But it makes us a case for the importance of diverse voices and diversity within um, literature in general and fantasy in specific, and I liked that. I read a book called Dispersals on Plants, Borders, and Belonging by Jessica J. Lee. This was also an advanced copy, a book that just came out. And Dispersals looks at correlations between, resonances between language that is used to talk about plants and talk about people, specifically in terms of migration, in terms of, um, you know, plant language like invasives and kind of xenophobic, not kind of xenophobic, xenophobic, full stop, aspects to this kind of language and the kind of conceptual framing that language is a part of. And a lot of this was memoir of the author and the author's experiences. The author is of Asian descent and grew up in Canada, and so she, has this kind of reflections about culture and how cultures move and how cultures meet, like in families. And I quite liked this. I really liked this. I sometimes find these books that are kind of part memoir and part something else difficult if the balance doesn't work, but in this one I think it really, really did. I quite liked this. I read Loving Country, A Guide to Sacred Australia, and this book was picked by Katie Flowers' Blossom Book Club. So we vote on the books. Every month there's a poll, and Bruce Pascoe who's an Indigenous author, has been on the poll a few times, and this time we voted to read Loving Country. And this is a book that looks at different sacred sites, sacred to Indigenous peoples, sacred sites in Australia. And so it talks about the histories of different parts of Australia. It talks about the ecology and nature that's there and how it's changed through like settler colonial violence and its impact on the actual land, like on the waterways, on animal populations and things like this, as well as the dynamics of these different sites currently. And it's written in a way that like if you were in Australia and visiting different places, it is a guide, right? Like it includes about different kind of things that you can visit, different kinds of museums or cultural centers and things like that that you can actually go to. I was I was a bit disappointed to have to read this one on ebook because there's a lot of nature photos in the book that look really beautiful, but I couldn't justify ordering the hard copy from Australia because it would be like just arriving now. So I would have missed the book club. So I read it on the e-reader and I really liked this. And I feel like I learned a lot. I haven't read a ton of work by Indigenous Australian authors. Um, I've read substantially more by Indigenous authors, closer to where I live. And so I really appreciate this. I was very glad that it was picked and we had a good discussion about it. A book that was not on my TBR list that I did read was The Witch's Name by Storm Fairywolf. And this is a book that's about choosing for oneself a craft name, like a witchcraft name. It would apply to like a druid name as well. And this was really good. I was quite happy with this. It went through all different kinds of considerations about um, why one might choose to have a craft name, where one might use it or not use it, why you might have more than one, different sources of inspiration like constellations and animals and trees and plants and mythological figures and all different kinds of ideas. And it did so with, the author did talk about things like cultural appropriation and pronunciation, like these kinds of things that I think are really important to think about in this context. And it gave me some good ideas. I'm not so much looking necessarily per se to have a craft name as I am a name that I can publish druidry, perhaps tarot, and other kind of related writings under. So some of the considerations like don't quite apply to what I'm actually looking to do, but I found it full of good ideas, including a tarot spread about this, and so I like this and I made some notes and I'm definitely going to think about this as I'm looking for a what I'm calling a druid name, but it's also kind of a druid pen name for myself. Um, I am really doing this fundamentally because I have a publishing record under my birth name or under my legal name. So I don't want like library cross-referencing between some like very disparate material. I would like to have, anything I write in kind of tarot or druidry or divination context to be different. I'm not sure if that means just, choosing a different first name and using my given last name or vice versa. I'm I'm exploring. I'm exploring. We'll see. I read Divination and Human Nature: A Cognitive History of Intuition in Classical Antiquity by Peter T. Struck. This is a 5-star read for me. This is my first quarter read for Historathon 2024, reading an ancient history nonfiction text. And this is a book that looks at basically ancient Greek philosophers' attitudes towards divination, particularly looking at Plato, looking at the Stoics, and a number of others. And in terms of divination, it's really looking at things like the Oracle at Delphi, the possibility of predictive dreaming, and things like this. Um, it goes without saying that it's not about like tarot, right? That just was not there at the time. So this was really interesting. I do have an academic background in philosophy. I think without that academic background in philosophy, this would have been completely impenetrable. So my recommendation of it is with like a huge caveat in terms of intended audience for a book like this. It gets into really granular conversations about how particular ancient Greek words are translated and the implications of that. And so I think it really is a book intended for an academic audience, but I found it very interesting talking about how different ancient Greek schools of thought approached something like what we might call intuition and the kind of weight that it was given and the kind of scientific and philosophical consideration that the nature of intuition was given in the context of thinking about divination and its role in the society. So I liked that it treated divination as a serious topic of serious concern to people at the time that people gave significant thought to, right? Because it was considered important. So I liked a lot about this. I really liked a lot about this. Good start to Historathon. Now I have to find something for the second quarter. The second quarter for April to June is reading a nonfiction book set in makes it sound like a novel, covering something in the years 500 to 1500. And Historathon is not in any way geographically specific, so that can be 500 to 1500 anywhere. I have no idea what I'm going to pick for this one. This is actually the quarter that I feel like I've read the least about. It's the quarter that I know the least about. The later ones, I feel much more comfortable picking something. And with a philosophy background, picking an ancient one was fairly easy, but this 500 to 1500, I don't know what I'm going to choose. So I didn't put anything on my TBR. I don't think I'm going to get to it this month, but if you have any nonfiction history books that you particularly love that deal with the time period somewhere between 500 and 1500, let me know. Okay, now I will mention a couple of books that came up in the TBR that I have not mentioned here, and I don't have with me. So I am still reading Red Tarot by Christopher Marmolejo. It's excellent. I am not done. It's quite long, and it is wonderfully poetic, but also quite theoretically dense. Not dense in like a hard to read way, but certainly, citing a lot of different authors and going in a lot of directions. It's really, really interesting. So Red Tarot is moving forward to April because I'm not done. I also had a novel for a local book club on my TBR for March called White Horse by Erica T. Worth. I started this and I didn't finish it. I did not like it. I felt like, I mean, the writing style just didn't work for me at all. Like at a certain point, I felt like there was a degree of stereotyping in it that felt uncomfortable to me as well. So I didn't give this one a star rating. I really I didn't get very far. So I decided to not finish. And then I decided not to go to the book club, but I told um, the person who owns the local bookstore who I chat with in other contexts as well, like that I had tried. Um, so that was a did not finish, unfortunately. But I'm happy with the 9 books I read for March, and I'm excited for April. So that's what I've read. 54 minutes. um, I'll just check in with the deck to explore list. I feel like it hasn't changed very much. I always put this check-in at the end, and I feel like I'm never really sharing anything new. I did purchase the Citadel Oracle, as I mentioned. The only thing that I've added to the list to explore since the last time I talked about this to explore list is that I saw online that Laura Tempest Zakroff, who wrote Sigil Witchery, which is a book that I love, that she has a Sigil Witchery Oracle coming out. It is currently listed with a release date of October 2024. There are no pictures. I have no idea whether this is a thing that I'm going to be interested in or not once I see what it is. But That's why it goes in the to explore list, because I really liked Sigil Witchery, the book. I'm interested in Visual Alchemy, which is a follow-up book. I feel like if there's a related oracle, I'm going to at least look at it. So that is a to explore. Similarly, forthcoming, like almost my whole to explore list at this point is forthcoming, including Endless Tarot um, by Eric, who made the Endless Oracle that I love. The Deviant Moon Oracle that's been in the works for who knows how long at this point. I want to see what it's like, but I like Deviant Moon Tarot a lot. I actually just bought someone in my personal life expressed some curiosity about tarot. Like she's never read tarot before, but she's had a reading done and she was asking questions about it. And so I decided to buy her first deck and I got Deviant Moon. And I'm excited to give it to her. So the Deviant Moon Oracle and the Aquarius Rising Oracle by Charlie Claire Burgess, which they have a little bit of imagery up on their website. It's playing card based, also forthcoming. The only things that are in print on my list currently, Stephen Bright's Inner Eye Oracle, which is a playing card based one. I feel like I'm just waiting for a sale or something. I don't know. Like I really like that deck. I'm gonna pick it up at some point. The Inner Ecology Oracle. I don't know. I like it. I like it aesthetically. And the Magical Nature Tarot, which is a Rider-Waite-Smith based, ecologically friendly deck that has some diversity in it. That's on my explore list as well. So that's my list. Oh, and you know what? You know what needs to go on my to explore list actually that I didn't write down, but does definitely need to go there is the Back Pocket Oracle by Auntie Kay's Tarot, which is the playing card based one. Since I'm looking at playing cards this year, that is on the list as well. Whether I go keywords or no keywords is in question, but that's on my list too. So that's my list. I hope that everyone's had a good March. If you stuck with me for 57 minutes, wow. Wow. I wish everybody a happy April, and I will see you again very soon.